on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Tonight, the battle begins. Ahead of the upcoming local government elections, Election Commission calls for nominations on the 27th of November.
Nomination period will commence 14 days after the notice.
The great revelation. Parliament debates, COPE member contacts with Arjun Aloysius. Parliamentarians request Speaker to launch an investigation. Passing the buck. Petroleum Trade Union collective charges that officials are made scapegoats for the recent fuel crisis. Empowering SMEs. State Minister Eran Vikramaratne says that policymakers should find measures to link smaller companies with the export chain.
We have to really break the structure of our present exports.
And in international headlines, Zimbabwe in crisis. Zimbabwe's Mugabe emerges from house arrest in political uncertainty. Good evening to all our viewers across Sri Lanka and around the world. Thank you for making us a part of your evening. This is First at 9 and I'm Mahesh Johnny. Our coverage tonight begins with the news of impending elections. The Election Commission says the notice to call nominations for the upcoming local government elections will be issued on the 27th of this month. Officials of the Elections Commission made the announcement today during a media briefing which followed a meeting of the Commission.
A meeting of the Elections Commission, presided over by Chairman of the Commission, Mahinda Deshapriya, convened today at the Elections Secretariat in Rajagiriya. The decisions arrived at during the meeting were subsequently discussed during a media briefing.
The Commission decided to instruct the returning officers of every local authority area to publish a notice saying that he intends to have call for nominations for that local authority area. The nomination period will commence 14 days after the notice and end 17 days after the notice.
According to the Local Government Elections Act, if the Elections Commission issues the notice calling for nominations on the 27th of this month, acceptance of nominations will begin 14 days later on the 11th of December. All parties and candidates are given 3.5 days to submit nominations. If acceptance of nominations begins from the 11th, the time period for submission will end at 12 noon on the 14th of December. A period of 1 hour past the deadline is given to file any objections against the nominations. Subsequently, the Elections Commission should announce the date of elections. The date should fall between 5 and 7 weeks from the deadline for nominations. Meanwhile, an argument arose in Parliament over the allegations that SLFP ministers are behind the petition submitted to the Court of Appeal demanding the nullification of the Gazette notification pertaining to demarcation of wards of local government bodies.
I
have never called for legal action or signed any petition that would delay local government elections. We do not make secret deals with the UNP. Yesterday's speech makes it clear who does. I pity the fact that they took 4 minutes of the UNP's time to degrade the SLFP. This is a misunderstanding. No UNP MP gave or took extra time for this. Deputy Minister Ajit P. Pereira offered his time to make these allegations yesterday. Check and see. It was MP Kanchana Wijesekara who stood up and alleged that even though you pinned the blame on the joint opposition, various others, relatives and associates were to blame. I don't have any deals with the joint opposition. Order your henchmen to withdraw this fraudulent court case today. Anyone in this country has the chance to challenge any law. We can't stop it. Before this case will be taken up on the 22nd, our party's secretary Duminda Disanayaka will appeal to the court requesting our participation in this case. As a party, our stance is that elections must be held immediately.
Now, a special meeting was held this afternoon between Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faisal Mustafa and key politicians of the East. The meeting centred on the culmination of the issue of the Northern Provincial Council.
I wrote to the TNA and got their concurrence with regard to creating one council. But now there is a new request which other councils are also being asked to be created. His Excellency the President and Prime Minister has clearly instructed me not to proceed further without getting consensus from all parties which are represented in the Eastern province.
We had discussions between the Muslim leaders and Tamil National Alliance members of Parliament and People's Representative. We are endeavouring to solve the issue. The discussions will continue.
Petroleum Trade Union Collective alleges that the government is attempting to make officials of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation scapegoats for the recent fuel crisis. Convening a media briefing in Colombo today, they charge that the government is attempting to waste state resources on foreign entities.
We say that this report should include the stoppage to the proposed refinery at Hambantota following China's investment. We know this report continuously attempts to put the blame on officials. Through this, attempts are made to sell or lease out these state resources to foreign nations. The people of the country had to be on the streets due to the commercial requirement of the IOC. This report has not looked into any of that. What would have happened had the blame gone to the IOC? At present, the documentation pertaining to handing over the Trincomalee oil tanks to the IOC are being prepared, and the public would have questioned as to what would happen if the tanks are given to a company culpable of such a misdeed. According to this report, the people will be inconvenienced again. A serious matter is mentioned towards the end, saying an immediate decision should be taken on the Trincomalee oil tanks. That's alarming, since the direction of that decision is towards the IOC. People should remember that the market share of the IOC is 17% and the public were inconvenienced for a week. If the decision is made in favour of the IOC will decide how and when the public is inconvenienced. The minister too is responsible, since the IOC is being left off the hook.
In our lead story tonight, several members of the COPE committee today expressed views on the issue of maintaining telephone communications with the former director of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius. Also, the working committee debate on the income and expenditure pertaining to the President, Prime Minister, Sri Lanka Parliament, Judiciary and various other institutions was held today as well. The members of the COPE committee have dealt with those who are responsible for the bond scam before the report was prepared. The names of the parliamentarians implicated are revealed. Will you launch an investigation into this through a special commission? This is evidence given before the commission. A decision can't be given on that. Parliament doesn't have the power to give a ruling on it. Me, as a member of the COPE committee, I have to say that it is completely wrong if a member has maintained contact while in the committee. To further clarify, I would like to request the CID to produce the telephone recordings to the Bond Commission and take a decision. When the issue was taken up for debate in Parliament based on the report of the Auditor General, how many of them said the Auditor General doesn't have the power to do this and asked him to withdraw it? Now it transpires that most who said so at the COPE have taken advice from Arjun Aloysius. If a member of the COPE has contacted an accused during investigations, it is extremely unethical. As its chairman, I am happy, since it's a victory and an honour to have presented the report to Parliament amid such conspiracies. During the previous government, the chairman of the committee was always a member of the ruling party. But we made a parliamentarian of the opposition the chairman. It proves our commitment to good governance. For the first time in the history, a Prime Minister was called before the Commission. He has to go on Monday. We are sorry that such a situation has arisen. Point of order. Point of order. This definition is wrong. The Prime Minister made a statement saying he will voluntarily appear before it. Then only the Commission called him. He didn't hide like the former government. The grandfather of Aloysius and my father were friends even before I was born. Although we talked over the phone, we never talked during the investigation of the COPE committee. We don't consider the friendships and relationships in this process. We have pointed out the issues of Arjun Aloysius and Perpetual Treasuries Limited. Some can say that even our grandfathers were friends. Now there are grandchildren who even remember the friends of their grandfathers. Why only the parliamentarians of the COPE reveal the dealings of all 225 parliamentarians with Aloysius by obtaining a court order? If someone of this house had connections with a band of thieves, should our phones be checked? Well, staying on the subject, UNP parliamentarian Hector Apwami, who is allegedly implicated in the controversial bond transaction following yesterday's revelation, says he informed the Commission of his previous affiliation with former director of Perpetual Treasuries Limited, Arjun Aloysius. Speaking on yesterday's revelation of the Commission of Inquiry, the joint opposition meanwhile highlighted that parliamentarian acting on external influence in decision-making could face imprisonment. I was called before the Bond Commission recently. I made a statement there saying that I knew Arjun Aloysius before being elected to Parliament. Until some time I did not know that he is involved in the bond issue. I knew him as a businessman. My conversations with him were casual. They were never regarding the bond issue or the COPE report. I never spoke to him about anything which was malignant to the Parliament. We are ready to face any investigation in this regard. We also suggest that all 225 members in Parliament be investigated to see whether they too had such conversations. The details should be revealed to the country. We request the Parliament that we be allowed to have a private life while in Parliament.
අපේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ කටයුතු කරද්දී අපේ පෞද්ගලිකත්වයකුත් තියෙනවා.
අඩුම දුරකථන සාකච්ඡා ගන්නවන දෙකක් පැවැත්වූ
Minister Dayasiri Jayasekara, who only got 2 calls, says Aloysius called him and asked for help over the COPE investigation, which he declined. Given such, we can deduce that other parliamentarians were called on more occasions since they agreed to help. Now they might give various affiliations to Arjun Aloysius, but what they should have done is to reveal their connections to Aloysius and step aside from the investigation due to conflict of interest. The lack of it shows corrupt intentions. The Speaker should suspend their membership and launch an investigation if the independence and integrity of COPE is to be preserved. The COPE investigation on the bond scam should also be relaunched. In the Act pertaining to parliamentary powers and privileges states, any untoward influence on a parliamentarian in Parliament or working committee carries a 2-year prison term. In addition, it states that a parliamentarian accepting a gift or a bribe in return for a decision made at a working committee is also an offence with a 2-year prison term. During the proceedings of the COPE, members of the government were either on the phone or was holding up the phone, facilitating the proceedings to be heard. Some made calls and then replied, but we never thought they were responding after seeking advice from Aloysius. It is a tremendous issue for the parliamentary democracy, and 2 of us hope to request the Speaker today by letter to suspend the 5 members from COPE.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, however, took the subject in a different direction as he pointed out that it could be a dangerous situation if telephone conversations of all parliamentarians and public officials were being tapped. He made this comment when he paid a visit to the Valikata prison to look into the welfare of his former Chief of Staff. We appreciate the revelation made yesterday regarding the bond controversy. Thieves and their connections should be revealed. Until now, we assumed it was only opposition phone lines that were being tapped. But it is very clear that the government is tapping all phone lines of government MPs, ministers, the opposition, businessmen and lawyers. This is a very dangerous situation. We don't know whether phone lines of the Prime Minister and the President are also being tapped. They are transforming the country into a police-run state. No such suggestions has come forth, but if that happens, we will hand it over to our parliamentarians. I will stand neutral in this regard.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Well, if you are a theatre geek like me, I'm sure dramas like Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet are some of the plays that is well known over the world. Drama is not only a mode of communication but a form of art which depicts the intellectual development of a society. In ancient Britain, kings and queens used to engage in this activity to showcase how noble and intelligent they are. In such a backdrop, for a country like Sri Lanka, English drama can be used as a bridge to link with the global spectrum to represent the nation and its people. For a form of art which with such potential, is Sri Lankan English drama where it should be today? First at 9's Anuradha Fonseca went out to find out tonight on our feature focus.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Drama, meaning action in Greek, first came about to act out biblical stories in ancient times. Later on, with the evolution of human experiences, it turned to a more complex form of art used to communicate messages, educate masses, depict social injustice and personal experiences. The history of theatre, however, spans over the past 2,500 years and is present in every society in the world. In Sri Lanka, theatre originated from traditional rituals and folk drama in the 19th century. English theatre in Sri Lanka, although not with much prominence, sprang up in the 1980s when Sinhala drama was translated to English and staged. Since its inception, what has the journey been like for English theatre in Sri Lanka?
Sri Lankan theatre is quite vibrant these days because there's a lot of new talent that is working on original work.
There's a lot more experimentation in terms of the kind of plays that are staged, where they are being staged. That's part of development.
Does English theatre in the country have an authentic Sri Lankan identity?
Part of identity is writing more stories of our own. And this is one area where I feel if there are more people creating original stories about our culture, about our people, then yes, there will be a stronger identity in terms of what is English theatre in Sri Lanka.
I believe that Sri Lankan drama has an identity. When you write about society right now or write about the issues that you're faced with right now, you're able to infuse the play with your own experiences.
In order for this art form to survive, the younger generation must be a part of modern-day theatre. In a country such as Sri Lanka, what are the chances of it actually happening?
You create these plays in school and in university and nothing happens after that. And I think that's a great shame.
What are the challenges faced by the newcomers to this field?
Theatre in itself relies heavily on sponsorship or corporate support. I mean, it would be wonderful if we, as original writers or Sri Lankan writers, we were able to get a discount or a special rate or even waiving of theatre fees and things like that for our productions.
This idea of paying an artist for what they have created is devalued. It's just a picture, it's just a song. It must be really easy to do. Anyone can do it. Funding is a huge issue.
Although there are a number of economical indicators that can be used to measure the physical development of a country, its arts can be considered an indicator of intellectual development.
It would be lovely for us to be able to have access to the ability to really create grander works as well, so that we can compete with the international productions as well. Have the time and capacity to really do research and development. That's another thing that other countries have funding for.
We don't talk enough about what's going on in our country. We need to stop sort of closing our eyes. The government needs to empower young people across this country who are interested in pursuing a career in this. I think if we are to take to a global stage and say this is Sri Lankan theatre and compete on a global level, then we have to understand what the trends are. Our textbooks are out of date. For a profession that's all about communication, we are not communicating enough.
The likes of production, technology and research cost money, and money is one of the things the industry lacks. With adequate capital, English theatre sector could be uplifted, drawing in more of the younger generations. If this materializes, undoubtedly it would provide intellectual stimulation and development, with the country being better off for it.
On to business news now. State Minister of Finance Derana observes that Sri Lankan policymakers should endeavour in finding ways of getting smaller local companies to link with the export chain. Speaking at a seminar, the State Minister pointed out that the Budget 2018 has taken the initial steps towards improving export competitiveness through encouragement and engagement of small and medium-scale companies.
If you look at our export structure is typical of most countries or low middle income countries where there is very little diversification of products and very little diversification of markets. We have a situation that those who export, a large proportion of those exports go out of actually a few large companies. If we are really to grow and break out of this, if we are really to propel our exports as a percentage of our GDP, we have to really break the structure of our present exports.
State Minister Derana Wickramaratne went on to say that the 2018 budget has taken measures to facilitate Sri Lankan SMEs to reach global markets through smoother and less cumbersome export procedures.
We have to remove the many para-tariffs we have. I think we have 6,500 to 7,000 para-tariffs. And we intend to liberalize, to actually remove those nearly 7,000 lines of tariffs over the next 3 years. In the first phase, in this budget, we are abolishing 1,200 lines of para-tariffs immediately.
State Minister Derana Wickramaratne also spoke of how the government has embarked on initiatives to gradually overcome the main impediments to development of startups and SMEs, such as lack of capital or access to affordable funding. The Enterprise Sri Lanka Credit Scheme of Budget 2018 gives subsidized loans at 6.5% to 8% to enable SMEs, including export-oriented SMEs, to borrow. The government will also establish an SME Guarantee Fund, which will further augment SMEs, enabling SMEs with viable business plans to obtain credit.
You always hear the issue as you go around, nobody lends to us unless we have collateral. So what the government is doing, I would call it really a bit of a patch or a plaster on a problem by actually providing credit and things. These are not long-term solutions. But this says a signal that we are concerned and we want to see development. We envisage a future where Sri Lankan SMEs and young startup entrepreneurs will sell their goods and services competing with the best in the world market.
Well, in international business, Britain is aiming for its future relationship with the European Union to be based on a free trade agreement more comprehensive than any other the bloc has signed with a third country partner. UK's Brexit Secretary David Davis conveyed the country's intentions at a business conference in Berlin, while dismissing the possibility of negotiations breaking down without a deal as incredibly unlikely.
We will be a third country partner like no other, much closer than Canada, much bigger than Norway, and uniquely integrated in everything from energy networks to services. We cannot be cheaper than China, and we'll never have more resources than Brazil. And that's why the United Kingdom is committed not only to protecting high standards, but to strengthening them. So after we leave the European Union, we will not engage in a race to the bottom. That would mean lower standards for our consumers and poorer prospects for our workers. After Brexit, Britain will have an independent trade policy.
Well, Sri Lankan shares rose 0.5% today, climbing for a second straight session. The Colombo Stock Index ended 0.54% firmer at 6,483.55. It shed 2.6% in the 5 sessions through Wednesday on worries over new taxes on cash-rich telecom and banking sectors. IT shed 1% this week. Now, for a detailed picture of how the markets performed during the week, here is Shabir Hussain from Freedom Finance Australia with our weekly review.
The IT sector was the top performer for the day, with closing at 206,000 rupees turnover, and the top 2 performers in that sector were e-channeling and PC House. The Colombo Stock Exchange fell to its lowest close in 7 weeks due to the imposition of taxes on cash-rich sectors such as banking and telecom by the 2018 budget on Wednesday. However, the Sri Lankan shares rose on Thursday, mainly due to bargain hunting in beaten down stocks and foreign buying. Foreign investors have contributed about 28% to the market turnover at close today.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to international news now. Despite a military takeover of the government and an ensuing political crisis in Zimbabwe, the country's president over the last 3 decades, Robert Mugabe, is refusing to step down immediately. Mugabe was put under house arrest during a military takeover on Wednesday amid a power struggle over who would succeed him. Today, however, Mugabe made his first public appearance following the crisis, attending a university graduation ceremony.
There has been no official word on the outcome of talks between 93-year-old President Robert Mugabe, regional envoys and the army chief. Mugabe insists he remains Zimbabwe's only legitimate ruler despite growing calls for his resignation.
In the interest of the people of Zimbabwe, Mr. Robert Mugabe must resign, step down immediately in line with the national sentiment and expectation, taking full regard of his legacy and contribution to Zimbabwe.
Releasing a statement to media, the military said that significant progress has been made.
The Zimbabwe Defense Forces, the ZDF, say they have accounted for some of the criminals around President Robert Mugabe. They are currently engaging with the Commander-in-Chief, President Mugabe, on the way forward and will advise the nation of the outcome as soon as possible.
International media report that many Zimbabweans are pleased at the military takeover. However, analysts were much more cautious.
If things go terribly wrong, it could lead to a suspension of civil liberties. It could lead to a suspension of the constitution.
Well, the U.S. House of Representatives yesterday approved a package of tax cuts affecting businesses, individuals and families, moving President Donald Trump and Republicans a step closer to the biggest tax code overhaul in a generation.
The tax package cleared the House 227 to 205 without Democratic support. 13 Republicans also voted no.
It's about getting this economy to grow faster so we get bigger wages, more jobs, and we put America in the driver's seat in the global economy once again.
The tax debate has now been shifted to the U.S. Senate, whose own plan has already encountered resistance from some Republicans. Democrats describe the tax plan as a giveaway to businesses and the wealthy.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Other Derana 24/7.
On to sports now. Rain was a catalyst today as well during the second day of the first test between India and Sri Lanka in Kolkata. Resuming the day on 17 for 3, India was not given the chance of recovery as they lost 2 wickets before rain ended play with the hosts on 74 runs for the loss of 5 wickets.
India resumed the day on 17 runs for the loss of 3 wickets with talismanic captain Virat Kohli departing for naught. Their fortunes were, however, much unchanged today as well, with Ajinkya Rahane and Ravichandran Ashwin being removed for single digits by Dasun Shanaka. Chiteshwar Pujara offered much-needed resistance by remaining unbeaten on 47. Rain interrupted play for a second straight day and India ended the day on 74 runs for the loss of 5 wickets. Tomorrow is the third day of the match.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Well, Sadhani Upeka is at the Other Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition for the next 24 hours.
Good evening evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. This is your forecast first for the next 24 hours. Tomorrow's temperatures will average at around 27 degrees Celsius in coastal areas, hitting a high of 29 degrees in some places. Cooler temperatures in the low 20s will prevail in the central hills. Now a low pressure zone will form in some parts of the island during the course of the day, spelling widespread showers except in the southwest, which will mostly see fair weather. That's it from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your City by City forecast.
Also, it's Friday, and before we wrap things up for the week, let's share a good story with you. Tonight's story comes to us from the high Himalayas, where nuns from an age-old Buddhist sect based mainly in India and Nepal have used the martial art of Kung Fu to empower women in the conservative region. Breaking established norms, the nuns teach self-defense to women in India amid rising reports of sex crimes. They recently demonstrated their skills at an event in London.
They fit in their children's head that you are a girl, don't walk alone. Please don't, I just want to request, please don't say your girls not to go, alone outside. Tell your boys to behave good.
And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7. First at 9, we'll return tomorrow at the same time. I'm Mahesh Dhoni. Enjoy the weekend. Good night.